for me personally, I would love to see the first line become just flow a little bit more. Something like a Navy SEAL became a dinosaur and made off with a unicorn. This happened in front of the British Embassy, but that's completely subjective. And then I felt it was just so wonderful going down this path with you until the conclusion a little bit. And I love the point of the conclusion, but it became very wordy, way you describing the exact style of poetry and how they usually make you feel, maybe, and then telling us about Bill, who I do want to know. And I'm not necessarily suggesting changing how the poem ends, but just some of the wording of those phrases, and it sounds like a very recent work too. Because it also, like, I was just like dreaming with you, and then that just like woke me up too abruptly from that dream.
Which point is the point that woke you up?
The simple ekphrastic poem. Just telling me exactly. So I've been so lost in this, and then you're telling me exactly that the alarm clock went off, which you're welcome to do, but that just interrupted my dreaming with you a little bit.
Does he live in Britain now? No.
So Bill is in D.C., and this is such a frustrating thing for me because, like, I mean, in a good way, I guess, and I guess it's kind of self-confessional too, is like, I try to, as much as I can in writing now, allow for self-determination, right? People are always asking me, well, what did you mean by that? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? And I relationships can be so hard because it's always like an agreement. It requires an agreement, or balance, and so it's like saying there's kind of two people, like, I'm the author, I wrote this, but yet there's still like Bill has a piece to write too, like in terms of, and I think sometimes as readers we want to be entertained and we want to dream, but then when we kind of like say, hey, you're just as responsible to define this, and the responsibility, and I did write it down on somebody else's poem too, like the responsibility of the writer versus the responsibility of the reader. And I always say, I take full responsibility for what I write. I take zero responsibility for what you read. And for some people, they go, yes, thank goodness, you're not going to take any responsibility for what I read. Shit. You're not going to take any responsibility for what I read. And self-determination is can be a really difficult thing, I think, in that way, because sometimes we want people to, it's easy to blame then and say, well, they made me feel this way, or they,
So this took place in Washington. I thought it was in London.
I feel conflict in what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
Because you brought up this idea of trying to create something that's timeless. But then you don't, that's a responsibility, that's a hope, an intention you have for reading this, and you do it. I think the last two lines don't need to be in there. Yeah. And you've done it. And the first line is so powerful in setting the stage, and then you immediately transcend an identity, an experience, a social role, and you and create two characters that just have this timeless inner reflection, and you do it, and it's beautiful.
I think that's why I say that it's frustrating for me. Like, I'm not a parent, right? I don't have any children, so I don't know what it could possibly be like to bring something into the world that you love more than anything, but have no power of assertion, right? Like, you can influence, you can guide, you can mold, but ultimately, like, that being and its freedom has, the ability to go do whatever. And I think there is a sense of vulnerability matched with, like, frustration and even terror in the fact that I can put this out there, whether you rise to meet it or agree to meet it or is entirely self-generated, you know? And so I guess I'm giving that option in those last two lines is like, here, I'm going to write this poem that's full of happily ever afters. I've been through my road. I've experienced like the hells of the hells and the heavens of the heavens, and I'm going to drive on writing this. Whether you decide to come along is your prerogative, I guess. And
I think the conflict maybe the writer feels is in writing it, you are trying to call people to see, to enjoy, to feel what you're writing, but they'll bring their own interpretation to it. And while you're the writer, you want to assert things, some control over these children who are your readers. You want freedom. Like I liked how yesterday when I was said, or the day before, I said, well, aren't you reading into this poem? And you kind of said, well, you're damn right, I am. Making me feel good, I'm going to keep on doing that. So that's as a reader, you want that freedom.
Okay, thank you. I want to hear Jeremy, and then I want to add a comment.
I appreciated, even not knowing, if I did not know Anne, so identifying the like Navy SEAL as a he, but then when the scribe became a she, I felt like that was pretty intentional from a reading perspective. I struggle with, like, I don't want to put at this point certain gender pronouns, but I felt like, and then with the last line, I feel like I even broke that further because it was like this, like the poet is the scribe, and then she's writing about a scribe who is a she, who then has the power to like ask the questions, what do I want to make real, and what do I want to feel, which I think are, I don't know, that to me with the last two lines, the simple ekphrastic poem, like those, that to me is also like sort of what I was talking to you about the other day, like people making art but having like, it's not always subjective. It's like there's stuff going on into it, and it's like when you look at St. Heaven, it's like, or you look at depictions of saints, and it's like all a bunch of certainly depicted like generally men or whatever. Like, and I think this breaks some of it down even by the last line. That is Bill's piece. Like there's an acknowledgement that this artist's perspective is able to be shared with other people's perspectives. And I also think like I didn't know what the word ekphrastic meant coming to Boston.
Yeah.
And it helps me as a reader to feel a little bit more empowered about the knowledge of this ekphrastic poem, and then it sort of makes me feel like I have permission to like read into the things that I'm reading into. Without
so
it
you
being
feel
as
like the phrase
responsibility.
there helps you?
The last one?
When this appears, you feel like that gives you permission somehow to do more with it? Is that what
I do. I think like the simple ekphrastic poem full of happily ever afters, like that can sound, I mean, in some ways condescending, like is all ekphrastic poetry happily ever after, but I feel like that's a really justifiable critique and line to like include in the poem, not just identifying what this is ekphrastic, so like I'm giving the reader what this is so they can know what this is, and also saying like sometimes these things create this, but I've already presented it as the artist. The question of what do I want to experience is real. What is reality? What are the feelings that I want to feel?
Yeah, there's something in the voice. There's voice here, right?
Yeah.
It's a kind of, it's not exactly sarcasm, but there's a little bit of like reducing what one's made. And I think that can just be made, like read as that, like, oh, but it reduces something and now it reduces my experience of what I read, or it can be read as, and now I have permission to take it lightly, you know? So I think that's just yours, that's just like information you're getting to decide, and yeah, that's what I want, like what we want it to